Good afternoon, family, and welcome to the Rivals panel. I am here with Matt Hyra, Senior Game Designer at Renegade Games, and Dan Bojanowski, our Senior Board and Card Game Producer. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Doing
Doing good.
great, doing great.
Awesome. And you've been watching some of the Elysium goings on, I assume?
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Following
loved hearing
along?
from Jason Carl last night and trivia and our co-host. Yeah, all good.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
watched some of the new show last night. That was great and very entertaining to see the vampires set in Miami and watching that great cast and crew pulling that off. That was excellent.
Excellent. Well, we are here to talk about Rivals, really, and all the new exciting stuff we have coming in Blood and Alchemy, and then again at the Prince of the City event at Gen Con. So we're going to start off by going a little bit deeper into Blood and Alchemy than we went yesterday if you were on the news thing. So Matt, you want to talk a little bit about Blood and Alchemy and what this is adding to Vampire Rivals?
Sure. Well, there might be some people who aren't really super aware that the Rivals core set is actually out in stores now, right? So let's hype that a little bit. So the core set is in stores now. It has 4 clans in it: Bruja, Toreador, Ventru, and Malkavian. Pre-constructed decks plus a crypt pack, which is kind of like an extra pack of cards that you can customize. But we're not content with just 4 clans. We're adding more clans, and we're previewing Blood and Alchemy, which is a pairing of the Tremere, Masters of Blood Sorcery, and the Thin Bloods, who have very weak blood, but make up for that in numbers. So we are expanding the game. It is an expandable card game, and so we are doing just that.
And I think it's worth pointing out to people who are maybe not familiar with Rivals completely or are thinking expandable card game, what does that mean? So it's what the big difference is, this is not a collectible card game or a trading card game where you'll open a booster pack and get random cards. When you buy Blood and Alchemy, you'll get the exact same selection of cards as every other person who owns Blood and Alchemy. So there's no chasing rares or mythics, things like that. You buy the pack, you got the cards. So
And you
that's
get a full play set of those cards. For
that is very
Vampire,
true.
Right.
it's one of. For all the other ones, it's 3 of each. So one purchase
Yep.
gets you everything.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. So you buy the one box, you can build any combination of cards into a legal deck in the game, which is really cool and is I think a pretty friendly business model. So
Yep.
Blood and Alchemy, Thin Bloods, and Tremere. What makes the Thin Bloods and Tremere different from the 4 clans that we already have, Matt?
Right. Well, it's pretty much every clan kind of has a little bit of specialty based on how they are in the world of darkness, right? So if you're a fan of the Bruja, you can expect them to be, tough in the streets and also have a little bit of political activity. If you're a fan of the Toreador, you know that they use style, panache, good looks, and a party mentality to do their bidding in the city. If you like the Ventru, you can imagine that they're really into titles and hierarchy and enriching themselves. And if you're into the Malkavian, you're a little cuckoo in the head maybe, but we love you anyway. And the Malkavians are they're a clan that likes to deal with conspiracies. They are out there to engage others, involve others in their conspiratorial ways. So those are the
Nice.
basic guidelines of the clans. So the basic outlines of the new clans for the Tremere. They use blood in new ways, and one of the ways is in performing rituals. Rituals are ongoing effects, ongoing meaning things that last for time, for a certain amount of
Beyond
time.
just the one turn or beyond
Yeah,
the
it's not
instant of
just a
the
one turn. Yeah, a lot of cards, and I'm sure most people who are listening have played some kind of card game. Normally, when you play a card, you play it, it does something, and it goes away. With an ongoing, or in this case, a ritual, the Tremere can have these effects that are just they last a long time. Okay, and you can even continue it. You can add blood to it as well. And one of the special things about the Tremere is they're one of the few clans with the blood sorcery discipline. And so they use that blood sorcery to do lots of crazy things with blood. which can include replacing foes' blood with your own blood, so that when you perform a ritual, you can actually draw that blood back in. So you're
That's
kind of
such a
just,
cool mechanic, I think, and
yeah,
it's
just picking
neat.
blood off of people to fuel your rituals, which is really fun.
Nice. Dan, do either one of these clans kind of speak to you more as the one that you're more excited to? Is it having worked on this, on the production and the creation of these?
Well, I mean, Matt will speak about the thin blood, but that appeals to me a little bit more. Just kind of the small guys, scrappy guys that work better in numbers, and I'm sure he'll speak to that a little bit more robustly than I can. But that
Yeah.
play style tend to speak to me and my card game background a little bit more
Nice.
than the other one. So
Yeah, I'm
Right.
actually really excited about their sort of
Well, why
track.
don't I talk about them now?
Yes.
I kind of
Go for
figured.
it.
Yeah. So the Thin Bloods are very, yeah, they suffer from weak blood, as you can imagine from their name, Thin Blood. It means that they are sired by people, by vampires who are very far away from the original vampire Cain. So their blood doesn't hold a lot of that vampiric energy and magic, for lack of a better word. So they need to use alchemical mixtures to enrich their own blood and bring them up to the level of the other clans. So you're going to find for the first time some vampires with a blood potency of just 1, okay?
Which is
Makes them
wild to
very,
think about just at
yeah.
first. Like that's squishy, but
It is. But if you're a player who's been beat by having your coterie knocked out, guess what? If your coterie is all 7 of your vampires, you're unlikely to get knocked out like that. And of course, they do have ways of preventing themselves from being knocked out as well. They're not as easy as a little 1 or 2 or 3 cost character might normally be. So
awesome.
we might see some of that later.
Well, speaking of, let's go ahead and jump into some of the cards in this expansion. We showed off the leader of the Thin Bloods, Jacob Frost, yesterday on our news panel, but we're going to go through a couple of cards from this expansion from each of those clans, and Matt and Dan can talk, and we can speculate about how these could be useful in the game, what sort of role they're going to play, and give you guys an idea of what these 2 new clans will play like and how they can be mixed into your current decks. So this is Jacob Frost. He's that Thin Blood vampire leader in the core set, or sorry, in the expansion's pre-constructed deck. Only 3 blood potency, which, as I pointed out yesterday, that's not a lot for a leader. But Matt, tell us a little bit about why or how that's going to be mitigated with some of those thin blood
Right.
abilities.
Well, certainly, yeah, and I'm already seeing people mentioning in the chat like, "Oh, Thin Bloods are a weenie deck," right? So these are some card game terms that people like to use. Like a weenie deck is made up of small characters, cheap to get out, because in this game you pay prestige to bring out vampires based on their blood potency. Jacob Frost is the leader, at least in the pre-constructed deck. You can, when you actually go to make your own Thin Blood deck, you can choose whoever you want as leader. But 3 is the highest that the Thin Bloods have at this point, which for most other clans is the lowest that they go. So you really do feel like you're a totally different clan when playing the Thin Blood. The Thin Blood, because they're so cheap to get out, to bring into play, you're going to be able to recruit 6 or 7 of your vampires pretty easily and still have a bunch of prestige left over. So you're going to see some card effects that are going to benefit you for having a lot of characters in play, which Jacob Frost does. He can get some big combat bonuses when he has a large party in the streets.
Yeah, and hitting for what, +2 damage with 3 other characters with him, that's a
Yeah.
pretty good buff. That's not
A
even
party of
counting the
4,
attack
yeah.
card you play.
That's right. Yeah, a party of 4 is easily done, and he can get +2 damage on that. Like, that's pretty good. That's as hard as some of the 5 and 6 BP characters can hit. So
Now, for
yeah.
both you guys, there's another, it seems like there might be another advantage to Thin Bloods in that you're maybe a little bit less vulnerable to being defeated by your prestige being run out. Is that accurate to say, probably?
That can happen, yeah. You'll see with some of our previews, there are ways that the Thin Bloods can spend prestige to keep themselves alive a little longer, and so yeah, they will. You know, typically people are done recruiting after 2 or 3 turns. The Thin Blood may or may not be, but when they're done recruiting, they might still have 10 prestige left over, or
Quite a war
9,
chest.
something like that. Yeah. So even if you're losing some vampires and having to put prestige on them and to flip it to blood, you know, you're still going to have a lot of prestige. So anyone who's trying to run you out of prestige has got has got a hill to climb, shall we say?
Awesome. Well, let's show their. I think up next is their Haven, which is again the pre-constructed Haven in the deck here. Which is the Pit. So the standard characters in your Haven have +1 secrecy, and then this is a thing that I'm pretty excited about with Thin Bloods, the gain the action thing.
Yeah. So the Pit, if you're so by the way, the core game set is set in San Francisco. And so that's the case for all the expansions until we come out with a new city, okay? The Pit, if anyone doesn't know, right, of course, eventually. The Pit is a kind of an abandoned area. I believe it's on Treasure Island, I think, which is a former kind of a little parade area, kind of a little island out there in the bay that kind of housed like an international not like a world, not like a, what am I talking about? World's Fair, something like that.
Okay.
Just kind of a
special
regional
event.
Yeah, it was an international fair type thing, but it's been closed down. It's kind of abandoned, and that's the kind of place where some young vampires, kind of like, you know, Thin Bloods are often thought of as like the homeless, you know, homeless youth on the street, you know, begging next to the coffee stand, that kind of thing. So anyway, with the Pit as their pre-constructed haven, when they recruit a character the first time they do each turn, they're going to gain an action. So that's one of the things about the Thin Bloods, is because they're so far removed from the original vampire Cain, they are able to they don't have to be home before dawn. They can be out in a little bit of sunlight. So not direct sunlight, but they, you know, if
the additional action is not only a mechanical sort of buff to the fact that they're so weedy, but also a thematic tie-in to their ability to get a little bit more out of the night.
That's right. Yeah, they essentially have, you know, an extra 2 hours to ply their wares in the streets, whereas the big powerful vampires have got to get home before that first ray of sunshine even reflects off a building, right? The Thin Bloods can handle it. They can handle a little bit of indirect light. So and they're going to need those extra actions, because recruiting all 7 vampires in your faction deck is going to take 6 unhosted actions, right? So unhosted means you don't have to exhaust anyone to do it. But so you actually, you know, you use an unhosted action to recruit, you gain 1 full action to continue with. So yeah, they're going to need those extra actions to actually do all those recruits. Otherwise, you would spend half the game just recruiting, and then you wouldn't be able to do anything else, which would be kind of boring. We're trying to avoid that.
And so it also seems quite powerful to me. Getting even 1 extra action in a turn, that's a 50% increase in a game where you get 2 actions.
Right.
So when you're playtesting, and Dan, maybe you can speak to some of the experience when you guys are working on the development of the product. Was there any concern, or did you come up upon any situations where it's like, oh wow, like with an extra action, things can get really spicy really fast that we didn't necessarily think about, or you had to maybe change some things or adjust some things to account for that kind of change?
Yeah, I would go back to Matt Hyra on this one. Honestly, the playtesting was not a lot in my purview on this particular set, so I apologize. But Matt, I'm sure Matt can speak to that.
Yeah. Basically, because the characters are on the smaller side, each individual character cannot make such a huge impact. So you're not really you're not adding actions to, you're basically recovering actions, is the way I like to think of it. Having all these small characters out there, is going to let someone like Jacob Frost make a big attack, but the small characters themselves are probably
doing as
not going
much.
to be super impactful themselves. So having these extra actions, you may or may not have, you know, it doesn't just translate into 3 or 4 attacks per turn, because
Sure.
your guys just aren't going to be able to pull that off. It's really the 1 and 2 cost, the 1 cost guys supplement the 2 and 3 cost guys. So those are the people normally doing the attacks. Of course, anyone can make an attack, but it's not, you're not just gaining a ton of actions where everyone can attack in a turn. That would indeed be a little tough. So,
and I would also note that this is a leader ability, and the leader ability is on Jacob Frost, who's a smaller than normal leader. So if he is removed from the play or whatever, that's no longer active.
Yep.
That's
If he
a good
gets
point,
knocked
too.
out, if he gets knocked out into torpor, or worse, gets burned out of the game with aggravated damage, that you'll lose that ability. So
You lose that engine.
Yeah, you lose.
Now, is
you
it
lose that
sort of
little-
self-limiting in that? Because you could use, I mean, havens. If you are tuning in, you're not necessarily familiar with rivals. Havens, agendas, those can be used with any clan, so, or any combination of vampires. So you could use the pit with a crazy deck with Hydra and some other heavy attackers, but that's sort of balanced out by the fact that you're giving up a Haven ability that is some of the other very strong Haven abilities. Is that kind of the
Right.
idea there?
Yeah. I mean, people who aren't too familiar with the cards might notice there's nothing on the pit that says Thin Blood, right?
Yeah.
So any clan can use it. But if your faction deck is filled with characters that cost 4, 5, or 6 blood, you're probably only recruiting about 3 characters during the game.
So you'll get less out of it.
Yeah, you're just not going to get as
Makes
much
sense.
out of it, because the Thin Bloods are most likely going to bring out 6 or 7 characters. Now, your leader, that's not a recruit, right? So that is just placing your leader into play. I just want to let people know.
Yeah, that's a good point, that the more expensive ones are going to get less uses out of it. Well, let's move on to their agenda. This is the agenda in that pre-constructed, again, for the Thin Bloods. And again, this agenda could be used with other clans as well. But the Thin Bloods, I think it's called Recruitment Drive. There we go. It's got Jacob on the cover, so seems pretty Thin Blood to me.
Jacob is on the card, so you can imagine that it's good with Thin Bloods. Again, anybody can use this, but if you're only recruiting 3 characters, the Recruitment Drive is only going to get you about 3 agenda. But if you recruit the other 6 characters after your leader, you'll be able to get 6 agenda out of this. Of course, once you've recruited all of your characters, however, you've got to go out in the streets and earn the rest the hard way, shall we say.
So yeah, Recruitment Drive, pretty simple agenda. When you recruit, you get an agenda point. That seems very, very simple, but yeah, you do need to make sure you have a plan to get those other points.
Gets you halfway there.
Yeah, it gets you halfway. One thing I've noticed about the art in this set too is the art is really nicely thematic to the 2 clans. Is that a thing that you kind of really aim for when you're working with the artists, you guys, to get these, to really develop an identity for each of these clans?
I think Bojanowski can take that one.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I mean, that's definitely something that we work through with the artists is drilling into these clans and making sure that they're relevant to those. We have some Matt does a lot of the legwork on getting the reference materials and determining poses and whatnot. But yeah, we work closely with Paradox on approvals and making sure that they work in the game for the actions that we're going for and evocative of the clans and the setting that we're going for, but also that they work well within the IP and represent those clans well. Like you said, this particular card, it isn't only for Thin Bloods, but we definitely want these cards that come from these sets to feel evocative of those sets.
And I think it's cool when you crack open again, people who aren't maybe super familiar with Rivals. A great thing about it is when you open any Rivals product like this, there are 1 or more pre-constructed decks in there in shrink wrap. You just unwrap those, you start playing. You don't have to build a deck yourself at all. You can start playing with those pre-cons. You can sub some cards in as you think, oh, I don't like this one, I want to change it out. And that's what the Crypt Pack is for. But they're really just grab and go, which is not common in a lot of these constructed card games. And I love that the pre-con deck like this has so much flavor for the clan. Let's see a couple more vampires from the Thin Bloods to give an example of what these other sort of, I don't want to call them like weak vampires, but you know,
You can, because that's what
quantity over
vampires
quality.
do. Yeah, other vampire non-thin bloods do call them weak. You know.
So this is
Yeah.
Wendy.
Yeah, Wendy. So this is a 1 blood potency vampire, and as a one with when your blood is that thin, it's like a 16th generation vampire. Notice that she doesn't even have a discipline. Okay, that's where the alchemy comes into play, where you need to get some alchemy going for your character to give them the thin blood alchemy discipline.
Okay.
Now, looking at her actual abilities, she's got 2 abilities, which is pretty amazing for a 1-cost character. So party attackers with that's thin blood alchemy discipline there. In this party gain +1 blood potency, and in this case, she gives them obfuscate. So she herself is kind of concocting a little bit of that thin blood alchemy just with her party ability to give. They're using alchemy and such to enhance their blood and give them abilities. So in this case, she's granting someone in the party, an attacker, the thin blood alchemy discipline and obfuscate. Okay, that's just for being in the party. So that allows a leader, or that allows someone like Jacob Frost, who's a 3 blood potency, to get +1, so he could play larger attack cards, right?
That's cool.
And certainly every 1 BP character in your party is going to be able to, they'll all add to it. So you might actually be able to get up to like a 6 blood potency on
Nice.
Jacob, for instance. Now,
But that's
the other
tough.
ability,
Do you build your deck with that in mind, hoping that all comes together? But that's
right.
Yeah,
tough.
that 6 blood potency attack is dead until you get the setup there. But
Correct.
if you get
that's pretty cool. You're gonna need some help there. So the other ability is how these 1 blood potency characters, I like to think of them as the like the special affairs division kind of see these teenagers and 20 somethings running around the streets almost like they're cosplaying as vampires, because they really don't have much in the way of actual vampiric power. So this prestige payment ability is how we simulate that, and you're going to have a lot of prestige left over, like around 9 or so after you've recruited all 7 vampires. So by paying 1 prestige, Wendy can give each of the 1 BP vampires in your coterie +1 shields for the turn. Okay, and that is the whole turn. So it doesn't go away if you've used it somehow. Let's say that if there was an effect that if someone played a reaction against you that damaged you, you could do that to protect yourself, and then still have that shield left over to absorb special affairs division aggravated damage, because shields and vagrants are one of the best ways to prevent that special affairs division damage. So if Wendy has 3 other 1 BP friends out there, 1 single point of prestige will give each of the 4 1 shield. And even if there's 4 SAD out there, which there can be late in the game, boom, you can just take that damage all to your 4 one cost characters. And
there's a question in the chat from the Darkness News. So will the blood, if you give somebody +1 blood potency, will that add a blood to that vampire, Matt?
Right. No, gaining blood potency does not mend. Okay, it just gives them additional potency for being able to play higher level attack and reaction cards.
Cool.
And some not titles in this case, because it's an attacker ability. But in general, gaining BP just gives you access to higher level items. It does not mend you. Now, just to complete the thought, if you were to gain a citizen, like attach a retainer that gave you +1 BP, well, that's a permanent thing, while Wendy is temporary. So that permanent BP means that you can mend up to your new BP total. Okay. There's not going to be enough time this is a temporary BP.
The window in
bonus.
which you have additional blood potency is
Yeah.
there's not going to be an action opportunity to grant mending there, so it's kind
Yeah,
of a moot point.
or if you did, like if you played a seduction and gained a blood, like you would gain it only for
to lose it as soon as it drops off.
Once the attack is done, you lose those benefits.
Cool.
So, yep.
Well, we've
Once
got
you're
one
not an
more
attacker,
thin blood
essentially.
vampire to show off. Let's go ahead
Yeah.
and see them, and then we have a couple cards from their deck too. So Candy Lou, it's a
Yeah.
2-coster, so gets thin blood alchemy out the door. Doesn't need to have it added by an alchemy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So it's not just the 3-cost characters that are decent at attacking. There's some 2-cost ones that they're a little trickier in their attacks. And one thing you're going to find in the Thin Bloods is a brand new trick, and it's a brand new token actually, which is the -1 BP, -1 blood potency token. And those are going to come inside the box, and she, if she does damage to a target, she's going to put a -1 BP on them. So putting that onto a character who's like a 4 BP character is going to drop it down to 3. Now,
that affects the cards they can play, and it also affects their overall health pool.
Correct. Now, in this case, she has to do damage to them, so they won't be at full health, at full blood when she puts that on there, but it means they won't be able to mend past their new BP total. And in general, not speaking to Candy, but let's say that a 4 BP character with 4 blood on it suddenly took a -1 BP. Well, now they're 3 BP. You can't have more blood on your character than you have blood potency, so you actually would immediately
sort of indirectly take a damage.
Yeah, you indirectly take a damage. Yep.
I like how in chat Batmat122 says the Thin Bloods say get on my level, and they bring everybody down to their level and beat them with experience.
Exactly correct. Right. It's like, you guys are way too big for us. Why don't you come down and slide around, in the grimy alleys with us for a while we cook up our noxious chemicals.
Awesome. Let's go into some of the cards here that are in this pre-con deck. I know we have some examples of Alchemy, which is of particular interest to these Thin Bloods. So Anathor Corporis, I showed off yesterday.
Right.
Kind of like the Haven there. If you attach this to a Thin Blood, it replaces the action that was used to attach it. That's how that works, right? It's not a ongoing +1 action. It just kind of replaces the action that was used to place it.
Yeah, believe me, if we wanted you to gain an action permanently, there would be there'd be flashing lights all over that card saying like gain 1 action permanently for the rest of the game until this card leaves play type of thing, and it'd probably be scratch and sniff too, but anyway. So yeah, this is the Alchemy. Now, Alchemy is a card type. Thin Blood Alchemy is a discipline. Okay, so just remember that those are 2 different things. When you see something say, like detach an alchemy, or look for, get an alchemy out of your discard, whatever, that's an alchemy card. Everything that's to deal with the discipline will show the discipline icon there, the hourglass.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So in this particular version grants +1 physical attribute and the Thin Blood Alchemy. So for someone like, was it Wendy, who had no discipline, this is how she gets the Thin Blood Alchemy discipline.
Correct. Yeah, there's no BP requirement on this. There's also no, you have to have a Thin Blood in your active coterie to be able to play it because it has the Thin Blood icon, but the character you attach it to does not have to be a Thin Blood. But if they are, you're going to gain an action. Okay.
Yep. That's cool.
Now, of course, as an action, the character adding the alchemy will have to exhaust, right? So it's not like you're going to be able to juice up and then immediately run out in the streets. Or are there? There might be some ways to do that.
and I think it's worth pointing out, I can start with Jacob. First action, recruit Wendy or someone. That action's replaced by the Haven. Then second action, play the alchemy card on Wendy. That action's replaced by the alchemy card. I've still got 2 actions.
That's true.
I love that. Like that's my kind of jam in card games.
Right. It is. It has happened a couple times where a Thin Blood player will almost run out of cards on turn 1. So if they have a really cool draw, but eventually all your characters are going to be exhausted, and but they'll be loaded for bear.
That's awesome.
So yeah. And notice that because it gives Thin Blood Alchemy, that you could, if you attach it to a non-Thin Blood, you don't get the action, but they get Thin Blood Alchemy. which then can make them usable with the 1 BP characters who boost Thin Blood characters during the attack.
Nice. Okay,
Mhm.
let's see another one. I think we have a couple more alchemy to show.
Probably do, yeah. Athenor Corporis is physical. So you can imagine.
Calcinatio? So that's kind of the social version of
Yeah.
Anathor Corporis?
Yeah, Calcinatio. That's a social style alchemy. So it's
And
fun.
I think we have another one for.
I'm pretty sure people might have guessed that there's a mental one, Fixatio, I think is how you pronounce it. If my Shakespeare holds up. So yeah, and this one gives mental. So yeah, that's those are all Thin Blood cards, and those are I'm sure everyone knows that gaining attributes is good because it's gonna help you as an attacker, it's gonna help you as a defender.
Now, one thing to point out, these are all going to have to respect that 3 attachment limit, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, not a huge deal, but just something to think about. I know I missed that the first time I was playing. I'm like, oh, I've got 6 retainers. This is super broken. It turns out it is, and that's why you can't do it.
Right, right. Yeah, so I mean, you know, if you put what you could put one of each onto a character and then they would be +1 in all of their attributes, which is pretty good. But if you get a crazy draw, you might get all 3 of your Fixatios and suddenly you're
that was what I was going to say. You could pump someone to be
a
like
big attacker. Jacob Frost is 1 physical, 1 mental. If he had 3 of those on him, 4 mental, I mean, that's
his ability. So you're throwing 4
plus his ability, right?
Another 2 or something?
Yeah, he could attack without a card and do 6 damage pretty quickly. So
that's pretty wild. So it's not just all about alchemy and the Thin Bloods. Let's see another card here. I don't remember which one it is, but bam, Dangerous Mixture. Still kind of alchemy related, and this is another good way to buff, like you're talking about with Jacob. He would need some of like Wendy's ability to buff his ability to play higher blood potency cards.
That's right.
It's a 5 blood potency, but man.
Yeah, if Jacob had Wendy and one other 1-cost character, both of those 1 costs would give him 1 DPs, which would take him to 5, so he could play this Dangerous Mixture. And it's a physical attack +1 for each different alchemy in the party. It doesn't even have to be attached to the attacker. So yeah, you could get that attack up. It takes a little bit of doing. But that is a theme in the Thin Bloods. Everything takes a little bit of effort, okay? Because they just don't have the natural talent. They have to build up to it all the time. And using numbers, numbers in their coterie is
sounds pretty cool. And it sounds like a little bit of a fragile engine. Like you can get it all up there, but if it starts to kind of crumble, if someone gets sent to torpor, it'll crumble down.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah, like we've seen those 1-cost characters, like if Jacob was in a party with a couple 1-cost characters and is now being attacked, those 1-cost characters are good blockers. They're probably seen as easy to take out, but keep in mind, each 1-cost character in the party can activate their ability once per damaging effect, right? So you could very quickly give a 1-cost character like 2 shields by activating 2 different party abilities.
And it's also worth pointing out that at least typically, I mean, if I have a 1-cost character and I block a 1 million damage attack, like that whole attack was wasted on that character. Like there's not typically just bleed over damage. So if they have a big attack and you body block with one of your 1-costers and they go down, that might be a good trade.
It's not too bad, and especially because they're going to come back on your next turn because they don't stay in torpor long.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah,
they also heal very quickly. Let's see our last Thin Blood card here before we go into the Tremere. So this is the Sunrise Surprise. I love this art piece. Like like you said, they're able to stay out a little bit earlier in the morning as the sun comes up and maybe use that against someone.
Yeah, so the first line of the card goes to that. So you can't play the card during your first or second action of your turn. So you have to stay up past 5 a.m., right? You have to find the time to catch someone in the street. But this is a closer card, we like to say, for the Thin Bloods. It's an action, not an attack, so there's no reactions to it. No standard reactions, I should say, but play it in the streets. You deal 2 aggravated damage to the acting character and target character. So if your opponent, if your rival or someone else has a character out there that with 2 blood or less, doing 2 aggravated to them is going to knock them out of the game pretty good.
Nice.
But you might risk losing one of your own, but you might be risking a 1-cost character where they might be losing a 4 or 5.
Cool.
In addition, keep in mind that you could protect your character
With your prestige.
by using those prestige abilities, and each 1-cost, because it's damage prevention, each of them can use it. It's not only the character who's attacking. Damage prevention abilities can always be used like that.
Cool.
And that's explained in the rule book. So
And this lets those Thin Bloods trade up, and trade out that one cost vampire for somebody really juicy. So I really like that. Let's go back into Tremere and see Sonia Valentine. Sonia
I see real quick, we had a question, like, can Thin Blood get multiple Thin Blood alchemies by that? So yes, you can.
So
if there's a
stack
card
the 3 Fixatios.
if there's a card that's looking for multiple Thin Blood alchemy discipline, then yes, you would have multiple Thin Blood alchemy disciplines. Yeah.
Nice.
There are cards in at least the core set that are looking for each blah, for each discipline.
Instance of dominate or presence or something.
Right.
Yep.
Sometimes it counts how many characters with it. Sometimes it counts the character itself, things like that. But yeah, that you would have multiple Thin Blood alchemy disciplines. Yep.
Awesome. So Tremere, Sonia goes back to a more sort of quote unquote traditional leader template with the 6 blood cost and a full slate of disciplines there. It's got that new discipline, which I told everybody was the blood sorcery. Is that's correct, right?
Yeah, the middle discipline there, the little kind of pentagrammy thing.
Yep. And then like you said, Tremere, all about messing with the blood. And in this case, Sonia just lets you at the start of your turn swap out blood on a target character with one of your own. And we're going to see why you might want to do that.
Right. So yeah, she just does it. She at the start of your turn, she just does it no matter where she is. If she's in the street, if she's in the Haven, not if she's in Torpor, but yeah, if she's active in the coterie, yeah, you can just go, you over there. Doesn't even have to be your rival. It can be anybody. It can be the person who's coming after you. That's probably your second best target, but you can just say, all right, let's take one of your blue tokens and replace it with one of my black tokens, right? And then they're going to be a little worried about that because they're not sure what you're up to. But they're going to assume that you have a plan, and indeed you do.
It's definitely not good. Like this is not you're not just giving blood like at the Red Cross. You've got some nefarious plans.
Yeah,
and we'll go into the
You're replacing the blood. You're not giving them extra blood. You're replacing them. So if they're a 6-cost character with 3 blood left, they're still at 3 once you're done swapping it.
Now, Matt, if I've got a character that has one of your blood on it, your color blood, and I have to lose blood for taking damage, I can choose which ones go away, right?
No.
And this is actually, this is in the core rules because we actually, foresaw that we were going to be doing this in the future. When you have blood or prestige from someone else so that it's not your color, you have to spend your color before spending other people's colors. Okay, that goes for prestige, that goes for blood. So yeah, if you've got 3 blood and one of them is not your own, you have to spend the other 2 before you can spend that opponent's blood that's on you.
Trixie.
Excellent question though, Dan, because that's people first be like, oh, I can just spend this. So let's see their Haven, and then we'll go into some of their cards here. And that'll give you a little bit more to look at about what they're doing. So rituals, that's a big thing for the Tremere, powered by some of that blood, and they're going to gain unhosted action, which means any action that doesn't need the vampire to exhaust.
Right. You can recruit with it, you can draw a card with it, or you could play an unhosted action card. So that's those are good things. Yeah, the Chantry. So a Chantry is the Tremere are a very learned clan. They like to maintain their own libraries, laboratories, things like that, and they call that the Chantry, which is it's just their safe place, So this one is fun in that it does require this to be your leader. When your leader plays a ritual, gain 1 unhosted action.
So that's going to limit it to once per turn, kind of natively, right?
Yeah, unless you have a way to ready your leader, And as you're going to see, rituals, as you can imagine, take a little bit more time than shooting someone in the street, right? A ritual is like, takes an hour or two. So as such, you're going to see in a moment why gaining an extra action is a good thing. But we'll get to that when we see a ritual.
Awesome. Let's bump over to something about blood is the name of their agenda. Rites of
Right.
Blood?
Rites of Blood.
Good.
Yep.
So the first time you play a ritual.
The first time you play the first time you play a ritual during each of your turns, you're just going to gain 1. Now, as you're going to see with rituals, you're going to, when you play a ritual, you're going to put 1 to 3 blood on it as you play it, as a cost,
And also fuel for that ritual, really.
Fuel for the ritual, yeah. Sometimes it's fuel for activated effects. Sometimes it's a clock, to determine how long it'll be in play, because they are powerful abilities. So if you do manage to put 3 or more blood, now notice that naturally you can only put 3 on it during the action of playing the ritual, but it is possible to get extra blood on it. So we put 3+ on there just to future-proof it. Yeah, future-proof it. So yeah, if you play ritual, get 1. Instead. If you fill it to full at 3 or more, then you gain 2. So not a bad way to go.
And that blood, where does that blood come from?
That blood comes from any target that has any vampire that has your blood on it, and that is not an action. It's not any effect that can have any counter to it. You're literally just recalling that blood from your vampires or opposing vampires, and you decide where it comes from. You don't.
It's got to be unpleasant when you're just laying, in your haven at night, and all of a sudden your blood's just like crawling its way out of your pores.
That's right.
So now, that's kind of indirect damage in addition to fueling these powerful effects, right? Which is kind of the cool thing that Tremere do.
Yeah, there is one stipulation to payments, as you recall from the core rules, and this is spelled out in detail in the ritual area, that you cannot make a payment. You can't pay a cost that would use up your last prestige or a vampire's last blood.
Sure.
So there's no suicides essentially in this. So that goes for removing blood from opposing vampires as well. You can't knock someone out simply by paying the cost of adding the blood to your ritual.
You can bring them right down to the bare minimum, but you can't kill them.
Right. As long as they have 1 other blood on them of anyone else's color, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't even have to be their original color. If there's 2 Tremere players at the table, they may both swap blood on 1 character, and then you can't pull blood off of a character if it's their last blood. That's the 4 rituals, and I should say 4 rituals. Yeah.
Let's see a ritual that. Oh, actually, no. We're going to see some vampires first. So,
right.
Grigori.
Yeah, we'll see another method for swapping people's blood out, because it's a fun thing to do. So Grigori, he does this as an exhaust. Okay.
Now that's not an action cost. That is just a exhausting him, which means he can't be used for a hosted action. He can't be used to defend later on. Right.
Right. An exhaust. It's not an action. It's a freebie, but exhausting a 5-cost character is significant. He's not going to be around to block anything. He's not going to be around. You won't be able to attack if you use that exhaust. But it's a great way to put blood of your color, replace blood on other people's vampires, and they don't have to be in the streets. Sonya gets to do it for free, as in just as a started turn ability, but the target has to be in the streets. Grigori can get to you in your haven.
I like that. And then let's see, we have one more Tremere vampire to show, Lorenzo Muric.
Yep.
I love the art. I mean, the art in this expansion, as I went through, like looking at these cards, really awesome. So props Dan and the rest of the team and Matt and all the designers and artists that have been working on this. Like,
I'm really better. If I can touch on that, I'm really also happy with how the card frames turned out. Each of these, you saw the green glow on the thin blood, and these Tremere, the card frames, we put a lot of work into making those evocative of the of those clans, and have really unique feels compared to the other clans as well. And I think they did a great job.
Yeah, the thin blood theme is that green, swirly, sickly, alchemical stew that they're making in the back alleys, while the border treatment for the Tremere is like it's like a purple feather with some beads. It's much more ritualistic of a frame. Yeah.
I love that thematic tie-in. And like Lorenzo seems like he's gonna have some utility because you're spending all that blood on rituals.
That's right.
You gotta get it back somewhere.
Yeah, you're not. Once if you haven't been able to convert other people's blood too much, you're going to be spending some of your own blood. So you better have some ways to gain it back. And Lorenzo is a great way to do that. Again, he's just an exhaust, so it doesn't take an action. You can do it during your turn, and you can mend one of the characters in your coterie. Yeah. Now, of course, with all these characters exhausted, you may not have too many blockers, right? So you gotta. There's always a downside to everything, though.
Yeah, and that's what makes it interesting. Like you're like, "Ooh, this is really cool," but wait, if I exhaust everybody, or there's even if you have those additional actions, you're going to use them. That's going to have a cost that somebody might exploit on you. So now let's see a ritual or two and see some of the things you might be able to do with all this blood you're taking.
Not yet.
I forgot this one's not actually a ritual.
Okay,
but this one's pretty nasty.
We're making them wait. This is good. So, Extinguished Vitae. So this is an action. It does require blood sorcery to gain the effect, which is to remove all blood of your color from target character. Now, let me mention again, rituals.
Oh, this isn't paying a cost.
Right. Ritual, pulling blood from characters during a ritual is paying a cost. Removing blood from target character is an effect. Therefore, if there was an opposing character that had let's say 4 BP, and you had replaced all of their blood, you could just exhaust one of your characters and say, boom, you're dead.
This is sending the repo crew like, hey, that blood, we need it back.
We need it back.
This might be inconvenient for you, but
Yep. So that character would go straight to torpor. It's not an attack. There's probably and it's just removing your blood for them. You're not even losing it. You just that blood's just gone. It just evaporates, as you can see from the art. From every orifice, shall we say.
Awesome. Well, now I just checked. The next one is a ritual. The ritual to show the ritual cards has completed.
Maybe
so we're going to see.
We may have forgotten to make rituals. We were so excited by everything else.
Blood makes noise. So what's when I saw this one? Yeah. Explain to me what noise is blood making.
Well, I mean, you're like 25, so you wouldn't, know this old song, right? So I know you're not 25, but anyway. There's an old song called "Blood Makes Noise," which I thought was a fun thing because vampires have been around forever and they know everything about popular culture. In fact, they probably are setting the trends, right? So it's fun to make references to.
I like that. Things, I did not know it was a reference.
Yeah,
I never have heard of that song, but cool.
Yeah, I'm sure someone in the chat will post a link to
some other aged fellows,
the YouTube video or something. Yeah, yeah. So this is a ritual. All right, there's a lot going on
here that chat has already noticed and has questions about.
Yeah. So the big one. Let's just go from top to bottom. It has a name. It has art, and then in the little in the bar in the middle, 2 actions. Oh my gosh, that seems crazy, right? 2 actions, ritual ongoing. Okay. Now, in the rule book, it explains how to play a ritual. Because it's an action, you're going to have to exhaust a character with blood sorcery, and then you're going to put you have to exhaust a character with blood sorcery to start the ritual, right? Now, in the rules, you are able to exhaust a second vampire in the party as long as they have blood sorcery to reduce that action cost by 1 to a single action. Okay. Now,
and you have the Haven that is also replacing the action if you're using the precon, right? When you play a ritual.
If you're using the Chantry and your leader plays the action, you'll gain 1 unhosted action. Now, let's just say that Sonia decides to do it all by herself, right? She will exhaust. She will play Blood Makes Noise, spending 2 actions, correct? And then is going to remove blood from, remove up to 3 blood from any characters in play, right? and then place it onto that card. Okay, if she places 3, which can be 2 from her and 1 from someone else, for instance, then it's at 3, and she would score 2 agenda from the Rites of the Blood, right? Now, and then of course would gain 1 unhosted action from the Chantry, which she could use to recruit or whatever else. Anyway, and remember that the blood does not have to be from characters doing the ritual. It often is, but you can take it from anyone. You can take it from a character that you just recruited. You can take it from one of your characters over there in the streets, wherever. It doesn't matter. That's the whole thing about the Tremere. It doesn't matter where that blood is, just has to be in play in a coterie, not in Torpor. Okay, but if you then have 2 characters with blood sorcery in the party, they can both exhaust, and that reduces the 2 action cost to 1 action. Okay. And of course, if Sonia, if your leader is one of those characters, you still gain that unhosted action. So after doing a ritual using 2 characters, you might be left with 1 action and 1 unhosted action. All right.
That's pretty cool.
So
And then this
Matt,
is
if you've done 1 action already, so you have 1 remaining, can you initiate this action as long as you have 2 with
as long as, yes, if you can reduce it to 1 action only by exhausting 2 characters in the party, both with blood sorcery, yes, you may perform it with only 1 action remaining. You can't do it with just an unhosted action remaining because it's an action at the start.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the ability is pretty straightforward. This one's ongoing and relentless, which means you can do it whenever. It doesn't have to be on your turn, which is kind of cool.
Once during each player's turn is what relentless means. And the activation is to remove 1 blood from the card. And when you do that, you can either gain 1 prestige, meaning basically just take that blood that you had on the card, flip it over to prestige and put it into your personal supply. Or you can gain 4 influence, which will be very good for schemes and titles and other things like that.
Some people have pointed out that like Tremere, might really want Keeper of Elysium if they're all going to be exhausted all the time. And that's a good way to pay for something like that title. And then when you've used all the 3 triggers of this, it goes away for good.
Yeah. If you aren't able to add any blood to it, sometimes there are ways that you can continue to add blood to it later on, not freebies. You can't just say, oh, look, I swapped 1 of your blood. I'm going to just put it on this ritual that's already done. No, you can only pull blood for free when the ritual is just starting. Okay. Later on, you're going to need some characters or some particular cards to refill some of your rituals.
Awesome. Well, let's see what else we have for Tremere. We have a couple more cards to show off. Cool. Theft of Vitae. This one's not a ritual. Don't worry. I didn't say it was going to be, so nobody can come after me for that. I love the image here of, we talked about that blood just getting pulled out. And here we get it kind of shown.
Actually, this is one of my favorite pieces of art. I love black and white art with just hints of other colors, and the red in here just pops amazingly. Yes. So the Tremere they can be a bit of a show off sometimes. They're the learned clan, and smart people like to show off sometimes. But they do this bizarre arcing blood from their victim. They just essentially from a distance just open up a vein and just slurp that blood from across the street. Which is really bad for being a part of the masquerade. But
I was gonna say,
it looks amazing. It looks amazing, and I'm glad that this art is equal to the task. So,
and this represents that they are just
So remember
a to-go meal from a City Deck Mortal.
And remember, if you're spending a lot of blood to perform all these rituals, you're over time, if you want to play a lot of rituals, you're probably going to use up a lot of the tokens that you have on opposing vampires, and you're going to have to use a little bit of your own, either like early in the game or late in the game when you just kind of played a bunch of rituals. So Theft of Vitae is a quick way for them to mend, so they can burn an unattached City Deck Mortal in the street. That means either a vagrant or a citizen, or even an SAD.
So somebody asked about SAD. So this will sort of insta-kill SAD, but you won't get the agenda because you're not defeating them.
Correct. That is the parenthetical text there. You're not defeating them, you're just burning them. But the last sentence, if they have a burn benefit, which vagrants, and citizens do, the acting character claims that reward. So if you burn a vagrant, you're going to get the burn mend 2 blood. If you burn a citizen, you'll gain the burn effect mend 3 blood. If you burn an SAD, that SAD will be out of the game, meaning it's not going to get reshuffled in, but they don't have a burn benefit. You won't gain any, you won't mend any blood on the acting vampire.
Yeah, SAD, for those of you who may not know what that is, Special Affairs Division. Those are the mortals that are going out at night and hunting vampires and trying to protect the citizens from vampires. They will harass you and cause you problems. Now, interestingly too, I guess what occurs to me with this card, if somebody's going, what's the agenda that's all about killing the SAD over and over again?
Hunt the hunters.
Hunt the hunters. So this is a kind of a good counter to Hunt the
This can
hunters.
be.
If that becomes very prominent in the meta,
Right.
running this is going to slow that down because you can burn some of those guys.
Now, it likely will not completely shut down Hunt the Hunters because you're limited to 3 Theft of Vitae in your deck.
Yep.
And the SAD, the Special Affairs Division, there are 4 of them. So it could end up where there's just 1 left, but you can kill it every turn. So the hunt, it may slow down the Hunt the Hunters, but it won't completely shut it off.
Awesome's Coyote has a question from a couple cards back with Extinguished Vitae. If you use that on a rival's character, removes all their remaining blood, send them to torpor, do you get the agenda for that?
Yes,
would,
yes,
right?
you are defeating that character. Yeah, anytime you defeat a character, it doesn't have to be in combat. If you knock them into torpor, doesn't matter how you do it. You're gonna get the agenda for doing it if they're your rival, or if you have a trigger, an agenda trigger that does it. Yep, it is defeating them.
All right, let's go on to the next card. Seek knowledge. Hey, there we go. I knew there was another ritual in here.
Haha, of course. So
same deal, 2 actions, ritual ongoing.
Yep,
place 1 to 3.
They're all the same at the top. 2 actions, ritual ongoing. It's always blood sorcery. Place 1 to 3 of your color on this. In this case, so this is a Tremere only. Seek knowledge, as we said, the Tremere are they're the learned clan. They like to just have knowledge. Knowledge is power for them. And that is going to be that's a secondary theme to them other than the rituals and blood conversion. So in this case, you're going to put some tokens on here, and then during your turn, remove a token, draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card. That card doesn't have to be one of the 2 you drew. It could be any card in your hand.
Sure.
So that's a good way to dig for the cards you really want.
Cool. And also scoring you agenda points if you are using it with the agenda
the blood,
in the
right?
recon.
Yep.
Awesome.
Could I do that multiple times per turn during my turn, or is that once per turn?
Every activated ability is once per turn, unless it says otherwise, and this does not. So yeah, everything is once per turn. Relentless is once during each player's turn.
Gotcha.
So there we go. Good question. And then Absolution. This is a Tremere. This is not a Tremere attack, but an attack in the Tremere deck. And obviously pretty helpful with Tremere when it triggers off the target having one of your blood.
That's right. Yeah, anyone can use it, but the Tremere are going to do the most damage with it, because if you attack someone who you've converted one of their blood, you're going to negate their reactions. So that'll get that damage through pretty well. And as you saw, Sonia and Grigori both have 2 mental, so this is a pretty key card for them.
That's
they
pretty
can
cool.
swing pretty hard and not worry about reactions when they want to make.
And this is a good one to splash in with if you're running some Tremere vampires in another clan. You can get that blood on them with your Tremere, and then boom, hit them.
That's right. You don't have to be a Tremere to take advantage of it. So you can, if you're running Tremere Bruja or something, you could get in there as long as they've got one of their blood has been converted to your color. You got your smooth sailing.
There you go. And I think this might be the last one. Scorpion's Touch is a physical attack.
Yep. This is another way if you don't manage to, if you don't have enough prestige to get Grigori out, but you still want to convert more blood out there, Scorpion's Touch is a good way to do it. There's only 1 character in the current
Tremere.
in the current Tremere set that has 2 blood potency, or sorry, it has 2 blood sorcery, but that can replace some blood, which is going to set up your rituals and other things.
This is the more up close and personal way to swap that blood out rather than the fancy across the street. Like,
right.
for some reason, it makes me think of
That's
Harry
right.
Potter.
Yep, this is the old-fashioned way. Just inject your blood in them. Don't use that. Don't use your magic. Just inject them.
Well, awesome. I think I don't have my list of cards, but I'm pretty sure that's the last of the previews that we have. Oh, for the clans, we have some neutral cards. So let's go to the next card here. This is a neutral action conspiracy out of time.
That's right.
So would these be in the crypt pack, Matt, or are these in the decks?
Well, do we want to? Are we spoiling that right now? I don't know.
You can definitely say if these are crypt pack or in the precons for sure.
We are saying that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, this is a card that is in. There's 2 copies of this in the Thin Blood precon deck. Because
1 copy in the crypt pack, so technically it's both.
1 copy in the crypt pack, yeah. So the Thin Bloods are going to have a lot of prestige left over after bringing out 6 or 7 vampires. So why not use that to power up a new conspiracy that can slow down your opponents, especially ones who are trying to do rituals and are kind of starving for actions at some times, right? You know, they might,
or even just a really powerful attacker, like only having 1 action on your turn. That's
right.
That's going to slow them down and help those Thin Bloods. I like it.
Yeah, good way to slow somebody down who is, you know, if they've got like 10 agenda or something, you just want to slow them down until you can catch up. So this is a good way to do it, and I'm sure Malkavian players will be happy to see another conspiracy as well.
Yes, yes. Next up, we have backup. So this again, neutral. It's a physical and social reaction. And this functions off attachments, which is going to be great for the Thin Bloods again, just with all the alchemy they're going to be packing on, but also good for like Toreador. It's good for a lot of different existing.
It's a good card for any coterie that is going to be going for retainers or alchemy
or
titles, whatever. Yeah, any mixture. I mean. Yeah, imagine a title and an alchemy and a vagrant. Like that's pretty. You can even see that the vagrant he's digging,
trash can lid.
He's about to do a dumpster dive there, but he's holding up the trash can lid as a shield. So in case you're wondering what was going on back there.
And it's got a one BP, so the Thin Bloods are totally on board.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this will. So you may have noticed the Thin Blood precon deck is pretty focused on recruiting lots of characters and then making attacks to fill out their agenda. But this will be very good for the alchemy side of the Thin Bloods, because when you're going to want to get those alchemies attached and then protect those characters.
Yep.
So
we've got 2 more neutrals. We'll go through these a little quicker just because I want to make sure we have time to talk about Gen Con and a little something extra.
Fair
but
enough.
Mesmerize, pretty neat mental attack. What's a fear token do?
Right. So we've seen, I've talked about the -1 BP blood potency tokens. A fear token is a token that makes it so if the character is essentially what a fear token says is this character does not ready at the start of your next turn. Instead, you're going to remove the token and then move them in, you know, and if they're in the streets, they'll still move to your haven, but they just won't be ready for the turn. If it's on a character who is already ready, then it's not going to do much unless you manage to exhaust them before their next turn. So,
but it's a low blood potency cost, another way that you can kind of slow down some of these big bad.
Yeah. If you're getting wrecked by, let's say, like a like a Hydra doing potency attacks, or Beretta doing a lot of ranged attacks, you can just run out in the street, put a fear token on them, and then that's gonna give you some breathing room because they're not gonna ready. Yep, and that's a dominate ability there. So it's a generic card in the fact that it's not the Tremere have dominate as well, so that's why it's in here. But of course, anyone with dominate is going to be able to take advantage of that.
Cool. And then crossbow, more ranged. It's got 1 additional damage in there, and then discard a card, and you can attach it to them. Basically, like they have the crossbow bolt lodged in them. Is that the sort of the thematic?
Yep. That's the thematic, is that you've hit them just for a little bit of damage, but you've managed to if you discard a card, you're going to be able to make it so that they can't mend during their end phase. So that means they won't be able to do that free discard on that character to mend one. They're going to have to do mending only through actions or unhosted actions and things like Theft of Vitae or going after a mortal and burning them to gain
Cool.
And it takes up one of their attachment slots, right?
That too.
That is also correct. Yes,
That's
it
annoying.
takes up an attachment slot. So they're going to be they'll be sad unless of course they have backup, and then it actually helped them a little bit. So
Well, cool. That is all the stuff we're going to show off from Blade Alchemy today. We're going to use some of these upcoming Vampire Wednesdays to do a little bit deeper dive into the different precons, the crypt pack, kind of like we did for the core set. But we've got 25 minutes left. Let's move on to Gen Con and what's going to be happening.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Can I kind of talk about like what this set looks like in terms of card quantity, what's included in the box?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's up for pre-order right now.
Yes, it's available for pre-order right now. This is the first time we're doing one of these expansions, so just to want to let you know what's in this thing.
Absolutely.
So as we've talked about, it's got these 2 clans. It's got a full play set of all the cards. It's got 128 total cards in it, and that consists of 2 49-card pre-constructed decks that are separately wrapped, that we've just kind of talked through, the Tremere and the Thin Blood. And then there is also a 30-card crypt pack, which has extra cards and some of the fills out the play set for some of the other ones, adds some new content there. So it's got all those 128 cards. Additionally, Matt has already touched on 2 types of tokens. The -1 BP, there are 14 of those. The fear tokens, there are 4 of those. Additionally, we have 4 card dividers. In the core set, we had included card dividers for all the different clans, city decks, clan extras and stuff. So we're going to continue to provide those so that you can continue to source your cards well. So we've got 4 clan dividers, 1 for each, 1 or 2 for each of the clans, 1 for the deck, and then 1 for the extras, and then a rule book. So MSRP is $30. It's available for pre-order right now, and I believe there are some pre-order incentives.
So if you pre-order, you'll get the Jacob and Sonia alt arts. It's vampirecardgame.com/pre-order. You can order from us, or you can order from your friendly local game store, and they should be able to get the promos for you as well. We switched. I'm now Hyra, and Hyra is now Holland. But yes,
I don't know what happened there. I think
and that's kind of more or less, Dan. That's the model to expect for expansions, at least in the near future.
Until it's not. We've got we want to establish some consistency, but we do have some in the works that vary from that. So we like to keep mixing it up too.
That sounds good. All right. Well, Gen Con. Matt Hyra, you're going to be at Gen Con. Dan, you're not going to be at Gen Con,
I am
correct?
Not this year.
But we have some pretty cool stuff coming for Gen Con. We announced yesterday that the Prince of the City tournament is going to happen on Friday and Saturday at Gen Con, the 2 middle main days. It's going to be a 4-player multiplayer event. And I just want to get my notes up so I go through all the relevant stuff that I wanted to share. But 4-player multiplayer event, the 4 preliminary rounds on Friday and the top cut on Saturday. If you don't make the top cut, we're going to have a 1v1 side event all day Saturday too. So you'll still be able to play, you'll still be able to win cool prizes. If you see here, we have this pretty nifty Prince of the City logo, but that's not all. If we go to the next picture, you're going to see one of the participation prizes, because I want anybody who comes to get some cool stuff. Even if you lost every game, you just had a good time, you're going to go away with some cool swag. So these are card sleeves. Prince of the City card sleeves. You can use them for your city deck. You can use them for your library. You can use them for whatever you want. You'll get 2 packs, at least of 50, just for showing up, and kind of nice custom artwork there, showing off that, hey, you were at this big tournament, you at least participated. Additionally, for participation stuff, we're going to be having a pretty good selection of plastic spot glossed agendas and havens. So there'll be the agendas and havens that you know and love, the ones from the core set, ones from the crypt pack, ones from this first expansion, but in a nice plastic sort of blinged out version so that you can use that in place of the paper one. So just for showing up, you're going to have some really cool goodies. And I saw Wistomaniac saying, cool sleeves, too bad the tournament's in the US. Not all Prince of the Cities will be in the US. We're going to have 2 here in the US this year as we sort of ramp back up into larger events. But I definitely want to have some of these in Europe, some of these in Asia. We want to spread them around here as we go into 2022 and beyond. So to that end, if people are interested in helping host a Prince of the City somewhere in Europe or another area, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you and see what we can do to make that happen and make all this stuff accessible to everybody.
Yeah, because we do need to make sure that host countries are going to be letting in everyone, which is currently not the case in some places.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah.
There's a lot of things that make trying to go crazy with multiple events this year difficult, which is why 2022 is when I want to start targeting some of that. But I'm not adverse to trying to hold an event somewhere in early 2022 to get some of these same prizes into people's hands. But not just participation stuff. We're going to have some pretty cool prizes for doing better. I can't show off all of them. We're going to have some nice acrylic leader tokens that will have the clan motifs. So if you have a Ventru leader like Bruno, you can have your leader token show the Ventru heraldry or symbology. But one thing that I'm really excited about for Prince of the City is the playmat here, which Chris can throw up on the screen. And if you notice here, this is the Prince of the City Indianapolis champion. That skyline is actually Indianapolis. So as we go to Philadelphia later this year, you'll have a different playmat. You'll have the Philadelphia skyline. Or if we do a Prince of the City Berlin or Prince of the City Singapore, we'll have that iconic skyline of each city on there and give you a reason, if you're able to attend multiple events, a really cool keepsake if you do well. And if you're not able to, you'll still have a really cool one for the city that you visited. This is going to be for your winner, for your runners-up, and for your top 16 variations of this mat. Obviously, they're not all going to say champion. But I super love the job that the graphic design team did on this and just the prizes for this in general. That is my prize preview. All the stuff I can show you right now. I will tell you that by the time we have Gen Con event sign up, we will have more to share on the prizes and the actual tournament scoring structure, all that kind of thing for this event. But we have a couple of weeks before Gen Con is ready to have people actually sign up. But organized play isn't just Gen Con. Like people said, if you're not in the United States, you want to be able to play. If you're not able to go to Gen Con because it's just not safe or not feasible this year, totally get that. We've got the OP kits here available with the pre-order for the Blood and Alchemy, but also available to retailers through our web store. If your retailer wants to get them and has not gotten cleared as a retailer in our system, reach out to customer service and we can hook you up and get the retailer able to order these. But 3 different kits featuring 3 new vampires and a nice playmat for the winner. So you'll have access to these over the next few months to play your local events. So your Vampire Wednesdays, casual tournaments at your friendly local game store. That is the intent of these. If you don't have a friendly local game store nearby and you're an organization that wants to run vampire tournaments for the local community, also reach out to us. We want to make sure that people are not limited because they don't have a store that's interested in supporting or able to support. Hook us or reach out to customer service. We'll get you taken care of. But Martine, Freddie, and Natasha will be 3 new vampires available through these kits and eventually available on our web store too. So if you're not able to get one at an event, you're not going to be playing short and not have access to these cool cards. But that's a lot of information and a lot of cool stuff. Matt, we talked, so Dan actually, with the core set being delayed, we've got this Blood and Alchemy pretty much ready to go and are going to be having that coming out before Gen Con is the plan.
Yep.
Matt Hyra alluded to the fact that we had the 4th expansion is in playtesting currently. We're kind of waiting to see any lessons that we learned from the actual game now being out in the wild that we can apply to that 4th expansion. What do you think about, so we know that's in playtesting. That implies we have 2 other expansions that are in some form of very nearly ready to
Yeah,
go.
yeah. I mean, we've got those ones, and the other two are most like the one after Blood and Alchemy is at the factory. You know, with and then the other one is I can't keep track, but it's in some measure of doneness and completeness. We're wrapping that one up as well. So yeah, we are definitely have long-term plans for this. We want to keep adding to it, adding new content. We're excited to do so. Been working on it for a long time.
And I think it's almost a mixed blessing, the fact that the core set was so delayed. Like, we have a really nice solid pipeline here, which means at Gen Con Thursday, we're going to have a pre-release for the second expansion. And I don't know, do you guys think we should share a little bit about that expansion now?
I don't know. Are we
I saw
allowed to?
people actually asking for something that's in it right at the start of the stream. So I think some people are going to be pretty pleased. Let's go ahead and show off the cover here of The Wolf and the Rat.
The Wolf and the Rat. Woof woof.
Boom. So guys, can you tell me who's in this? What's The Wolf and the Rat?
Matt, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, Wolf and the Rat. If you're not too familiar with vampire lore, you might wonder, oh, Wolf and Rat, that seems weird. Well, these are a couple of clans that have the animalism discipline, and the wolf is a nickname of the Gangrel clan, and the rat is a nickname of the Nosferatu clan. So these are the two clans that will be in the second expansion, the one that will come a few months after Blood and Alchemy.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
And
we're hoping, yeah, Matt, as Matt said, we're looking for a Gen Con preview of this, but you know, given logistical delays, you know, this could be in the fall in like October-ish or something, depending on how the
I will say
logistics
that
all
we have made
sort out.
plans to make sure that we have enough at Gen Con to do the pre-release at least, even if it is going to come out a little bit afterwards. Don't worry, that's not going to mess up wider organized play. If it's available in limited quantities at Gen Con, it's not going to be available. It's not going to be legal for just all tournament play and give those people an advantage.
Yeah.
Don't stress about that. I was going to say something. Don't worry about it. We're just going to show off 2 cards from this. We're not going to show off anything else. We'll just show you the leaders and let you guys and gals sort of ruminate on what that means for the... Oh, Dan and Matt. La Sombra. I saw that mentioned already in the chat. We had that poll talking about which plan would you like to see. La Sombra won. Why is it not in this expansion?
Right. Well, that goes back to us trying to get ahead of the game, and we put out the poll, but we really had to get started on the next set of clans before the poll was before the poll could even get out there.
Yeah.
And we had to make an educated guess based on a little bit of what we had seen. We knew from the Kickstarter that Tremere was overwhelmingly the most popular clan that people wanted to see next. And when we thought, well, let's do a poll because we're really not sure where people want to go. But before the poll could even be arranged, because we had to clear some
just due to
stuff.
the length of your pipeline, essentially.
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
to.
Yeah. So we had to make a call, and we thought that going for some of the core clans from the current 5th edition Vampire the Masquerade role-playing game would be more accessible to players, things that everyone would want to see, because there are clans that are very small, essentially minor clans at this point. They may be fan favorites, but they didn't quite get the full treatment, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to wait on any new lore before we could start up a new expansion. So we had to go with something from the core game, something was already well established, and something that we could get right into it, just because originally the game was supposed to be out 6 months ago, right? So yeah.
So this is not a case of you guys ignoring the poll. It's just a case of this work started a long time ago.
When the Kickstarter was going, we were already a couple sets into our development pipeline.
Yep.
So we understand that won the poll, and it is in the works. So as we've talked about, we've got lots in the works, but it's just not in these first 2 expansions.
Yep. So yeah, I
Yep.
wanted to just address that because I know it's come up when we announced Blade and Alchemy, and I saw people bring it up in chat. But let's just see real quick, Tamaska, who's the Gangrel leader, and there's some new stuff in there. There's obviously the wolf icon there, and as you talked about, the card frames of the fur, Dan,
Yeah.
very evocative of the Gangrel. And then animals.
Yep. Animals are a new card type, kind of like Alchemy is. And animals are going to be, your attachments that you can put on your vampires, especially ones with animalism. You can see the paw there. And those are going to give your character some kind of static ability usually, but also a detachability. So you can kind of like sick your dog or a swarm of locusts on an opponent. So by detaching them, they can do your bidding out in the streets while you might stick around protected, things like that.
Nice.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I love the art there with that very hungry looking dog.
Very, I know.
And then General Flint. So I got Nosferatu in that World of Darkness. Which clan are you? Which,
So did
I mean, when they showed me the picture, I felt a little sad, but they do seem to have some pretty cool abilities and things.
Yeah. So Nosferatu, they're a clan that they're known as the Rat, right? So they spend some time in the sewers. They're also the least human. They're the most grotesque of vampires. So
Much like me.
I guess so. I got Nosferatu as well. So anyway, they actually they really crave that they respect the humanity of humans, and so they are protective of them in certain aspects. So they are a clan, as you can see from General Flint. They like to get retainers, and he becomes a formidable foe when he has 2 or more retainers on them. The first retainer will reduce opposing shields, and a second retainer will make him more dangerous in combat. And having that 2 potency right there, you can imagine that he's going to be able to do some pretty nasty attack cards.
Well, that's
And
pretty cool.
Nosferatu will have ways of manipulating I say manipulating, I mean, let's call it protecting humans. They like to protect humanity because they lack it, right? They're
Sure.
monsters. People see them as monsters, and that drains their own humanity. So when they have a chance to engage with humanity or protect someone from being killed by another vampire, they'll take it.
And he has animalism as well, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So both clans, anybody can use whatever animal they want, but there's going to be certain animals that might be more useful for one clan or the other, depending on your strategy, of course.
Cool. Well, just to be super clear, this is all you guys will see of the Wolf and the Rat for a while. We're going to be focusing on sharing more about Blood and Alchemy, getting that into people's hands. But of course, at Gen Con, you'll have an opportunity to play with this set in the pre-release, and we will start to do a little bit more marketing and discussion of that as we get a little bit later on in the summer. But both Matt and Dan, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to talk about Rivals. We've got a lot coming, a lot of fun stuff that's going to be available for people to participate in. If you're in your local game store now, they can get those kits. If you're a Kickstarter backer and you have that Season 0 kit, that is a great tool to hold a intro event and get some people to play and get those smoke cards into players' hands. Start up your own community there in your local area, because we're going to have more kits and more events coming. And of course, more clans.
I'll answer a quick question. Yeah, we're not going to show an animal here, but I see the question, is an animal considered a retainer? No, animal is a new card type, like I said. So yeah, it'll just be like action animal, something like that.
There you go. Get an extra little tease of the which one are they? Not the Gangrel. But that is all we have on Rivals for today, unless you guys have anything extra. I think we kind of already did our little extra tease, but come to Gen Con, say hi to Matt and I, come play in Prince of the City. I want to get a lot of cool prizes into people's hands, and I'm just super excited to see people playing this in person and seeing the meta develop, as we get that more competitive atmosphere. So I really hope to see a lot of you at the show or at PAX Unplugged, and let us know how Vampire is going in your area and how you're going with the community. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Great.
Thank you.
It was
Take
fun.
care, everybody.